I was sitting beside my uncle's hospital bed when he grabbed my hand, looked me straight in the eyes, and said something I'll never forget. "Don't make the same mistakes I did." I spent my life chasing the wrong things. His voice was barely a whisper, but those words hit me like thunder. Here was a man who'd achieved everything society told him was important: the career, the house, the status. Yet in his final moments, none of that mattered. What haunted him weren't his failures, but the roads he never traveled, the relationships he'd neglected, the authentic life he hadn't allowed himself to live. That conversation changed everything for me, and it might just change everything for you too. You know, for those of us in the baby boomer generation, we've witnessed incredible change. We saw mankind walk on the moon, watched the Berlin Wall fall, and experienced the birth of the internet. We've lived through cultural revolutions and technological transformations that our parents could never have imagined. But despite all this progress and experience, many of us are approaching our later years with a nagging feeling that something important might be missing. One of the most consistent regrets expressed by people at the end of their lives is surprisingly simple. "I wish I hadn't worked so hard." As a generation, we baby boomers have been called the workaholics of modern history. Many of us defined ourselves by our careers and measured success by our professional achievements. I remember talking with Martha, a retired executive who'd climbed to the top of her field in publishing. At 78, recovering from a serious health scare, she told me, "I missed my children growing up. I was always too busy for vacations. I postponed joy, thinking there would be time later. But later came, and I was too tired to enjoy it." The research backs this up. Palliative care nurse Bronnie Ware, who spent years working with patients in the last weeks of their lives, documented this as one of the top 5 regrets. Particularly among men, the regret of spending too much time on the treadmill of work was almost universal. For our generation, this hits especially hard. We're the generation that invented the 60-hour workweek, that normalized bringing work home, that sacrificed family dinners for late nights at the office. We believed we were building something important, and in many ways, we were. But at what cost? What's particularly poignant is that nobody on their deathbed ever says, "I wish I'd spent more time at the office." Not one person. Ever. Instead, they talk about missed Little League games, anniversaries celebrated with quick phone calls rather than romantic getaways, and friendships that withered from neglect. So the question becomes, what can we do with whatever time we have left? It's never too late to shift priorities. Even small changes, like actually taking your full vacation time, scheduling non-negotiable family events, or simply being fully present rather than mentally at work during personal time, can make a profound difference. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. This is actually the #1 regret of the dying, according to multiple studies. And it's particularly relevant for baby boomers. I spoke with Richard, a 72-year-old former accountant, who shared something that broke my heart. "I always wanted to be a photographer," he said. "I have an eye for it, everyone tells me so. But my father said it wasn't a real job, so I became an accountant instead. 40 years at the same firm. And you know what? I was good at it, but I never loved it. Not for a single day. Our generation came of age in a time of both tremendous possibility and tremendous pressure. We were told we could do anything, but also that we should be practical, responsible, sensible. Many of us chose security over passion, practicality over dreams. We did what was expected. But here's what's fascinating and hopeful. Unlike previous generations, we're living longer, healthier lives. Many of us will have 20, 30, even 40 years after traditional retirement age. That's not a footnote to life. That's a whole new chapter. Maybe even a whole new book. It's never too late to pursue those dormant dreams. I know a woman who published her first novel at 78. A man who learned to play the cello at 65 and now performs in a community orchestra. A couple who sold their home at 70 to travel the world in a way they'd always dreamed about but never dared to do. What dreams have you put on the shelf? What would your authentic self, the one that exists beneath layers of shoulds and expectations, really love to do? Because if not now, when? I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. This regret hits hard for many people in their final days. As we get older, we often let friendships slip away, sometimes through benign neglect, sometimes through unresolved conflicts we never took the time to heal. For baby boomers, this disconnection can be particularly painful. We grew up in communities where people knew their neighbors, where extended families often lived close by, where social connections weren't mediated through screens. Yet many of us find ourselves isolated in our later years. Tom, a 75-year-old retired teacher I interviewed, said something that stayed with me. I had a falling out with my best friend over something so trivial I can't even remember what it was now. That was 20 years ago. I kept meaning to call him, to make it right, but I was proud or busy or... I don't know. Last year I found out he'd died. That chance is gone forever. The research on social connection and health is unambiguous. Meaningful relationships aren't just nice to have, essential for our physical and mental well-being. People with strong social ties live longer, recover from illness faster, and report higher levels of happiness and life satisfaction. Technology has created new ways to reconnect. I've seen beautiful reunions happen through Facebook, old classmates finding each other after decades, friendships rekindled through a simple message. But the deepest connections still require courage, the courage to reach out, to be vulnerable too. Say, "I've missed you," or "I'm sorry," or simply, "Let's not waste any more time." Who have you lost touch with that once meant the world to you? What relationship might be healed with a phone call, an email, a cup of coffee? The door to reconnection is always there. We just need the courage to knock. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Many people reach the end of life carrying decades of unexpressed emotions, love that was never declared, gratitude never articulated, hurts never addressed. For men of our generation especially, showing emotion was often discouraged. "Big boys don't cry" wasn't just a saying, it was a cultural mandate. James, an 80-year-old former military officer, told me about his greatest regret with tears in his eyes. "I never told my children I was proud of them. I thought they knew. I thought showing them would be enough. But now my son says he spent his whole life trying to earn my approval, never realizing he already had it. What a waste. What an unnecessary pain I caused. The cost of emotional suppression goes beyond relationships. Research shows that chronic emotional suppression is linked to heart disease, immune system dysfunction, and decreased psychological well-being. We were taught that keeping a stiff upper lip was strength, but in many ways it's been our weakness. The good news is that it's never too late to start expressing what matters. I've witnessed remarkable transformations in people who finally gave themselves permission to be emotionally authentic. The father who finally told his daughter how much he admired her courage. The woman who finally expressed her decades-long love for her best friend. The siblings who finally addressed the childhood hurt that had kept them distant for years. These conversations can be terrifying. They make us vulnerable. But they also set us free. And they give others the gift of knowing exactly how we feel, while we still have the chance to tell them. I wish I had let myself be happier. This regret surprised me when I first encountered it. Let myself be happier. Don't we all want to be happy? But as I spoke with more people in their final chapter of life, I began to understand. Many of us, especially in the baby boomer generation, were raised with certain scripts about life that actually prevented happiness. We stayed in patterns and habits out of comfort or fear. We remained in the familiar, even when it didn't serve us. We chose what we thought was safe over what might have brought us joy. Eleanor, a 76-year-old woman I interviewed for this project, put it beautifully. I was always waiting to be happy. When I finish school, when I get married, when the kids are older, when I retire, I kept pushing happiness into the future. Now I realize happiness isn't a destination. It was available all along, in small moments I was too busy or too afraid to embrace. Science confirms what philosophers have long taught. Happiness comes not from external achievements or possessions, but from how we perceive and engage with our lives. It comes from gratitude, from meaningful connection, from living in alignment with our values, from being fully present in our lives. And here's the liberating truth. Happiness is largely a choice. Not in a simplistic, just decide to be happy way that dismisses real challenges, but in the sense that we can choose to practice habits that foster well-being. We can choose to focus on what's good rather than what's lacking. We can choose to release ourselves from patterns that no longer serve us. For many baby boomers, there's a voice that says we don't deserve happiness, or that focusing on our own joy is somehow selfish. But what if the opposite is true? What if our joy is actually a gift to those around us? What if allowing ourselves to be happy creates a permission structure for others to do the same? I wish I'd taken better care of myself. This regret often surfaces as people face health challenges that might have been prevented or minimized through different lifestyle choices. Our generation was the first to have substantial scientific evidence about the impact of diet, exercise, stress, and sleep on long-term health. Yet many of us ignored this knowledge, thinking we were somehow invincible. I spoke with Robert, a 69-year-old dealing with multiple health issues, who said, "I treated my body like a rental car. I figured it didn't matter what I did to it. Skip sleep, eat whatever, ignore pain, push through stress. Now I'm paying the price, and no amount of money can buy back my health." The regret isn't just about physical decline. It's about the lost quality of life, the adventures not taken because the body can't keep up, the grandchildren who can't be chased around the yard, the travels postponed until mobility became too limited. But there's hope in this area too. Research shows that it's never too late to benefit from improved self-care. The body has remarkable resilience. Studies of people in their 70s and 80s who begin strength training show significant gains in muscle mass and function. Changes in diet can reverse some conditions once thought permanent. Meditation and stress management can improve everything from blood pressure to sleep quality. Taking better care of ourselves isn't about achieving some idealized notion of health or appearance. It's about creating the physical foundation that allows us to live fully for whatever time we have left. It's about respecting the incredible vehicle that carries us through this life. What small change might you make today that your future self will thank you for? I wish I'd been smarter about money, not to have more, but to have freedom. This regret takes different forms for different people. Some wish they'd saved more, creating a cushion that would allow more choices in their later years. Others wish they hadn't wasted resources on status symbols and possessions that brought little lasting joy. Still others wish they'd been braver about investing in experiences rather than things. For baby boomers, this can be especially poignant. We're the generation that invented the concept of retail therapy. We embraced conspicuous consumption in a way previous generations never did. And while many of us have accumulated significant assets, studies show that a substantial percentage of boomers haven't saved enough to maintain their lifestyle through a potentially long retirement. Margaret, a 71-year-old retired teacher, told me, "I wish I'd understood earlier that money isn't primarily about wealth, it's about choice." Every dollar I saved wasn't just a dollar, it was a future option. The freedom to say yes to opportunities or no to situations that weren't right for me. The good news is that it's rarely too late to make better financial choices. Even small adjustments in spending and saving can create more freedom and less stress. And sometimes the most powerful financial decisions aren't about earning more, but about wanting less, discovering that many of the things we thought we needed were actually weighing us down rather than lifting us up. The question isn't, how can I get more? But what do I truly need for a life that feels rich and meaningful to me? I wish I'd paid attention to my spiritual life. This regret isn't necessarily about organized religion, though for some it is. It's about the deeper questions of meaning, purpose, and connection to something larger than ourselves, questions that often get pushed aside in the busyness of midlife, but return with new urgency as we age. I spoke with David, a 78-year-old former business executive who described himself as successful by every conventional measure, but spiritually bankrupt until my heart attack at 65. He told me, "I had to nearly die to start asking why I was living." What a waste to wait so long to ask the only questions that truly matter. For baby boomers, this spiritual dimension can be complicated. Many of us rejected the religious traditions we were raised in, sometimes for very good reasons. But in throwing out formal religion, some of us also inadvertently discarded practices that nourish the soul: contemplation, community, ritual, a sense of the sacred. Research increasingly shows that spiritual well-being, however we define it, is connected to physical and mental health. People with a sense of meaning and purpose tend to be more resilient in the face of challenges. They report higher life satisfaction. They even appear to have stronger immune function. Spiritual reconnection can take countless forms. For some, it means returning to religious traditions with new, more mature eyes. For others, it means finding the sacred in nature, in art, in service to others. For still others, it means developing personal practices of meditation, gratitude, or contemplation. The key is recognizing that we are more than physical beings with material needs. We are also beings who thirst for meaning, for connection, for some understanding of our place in the vast, mysterious universe. Attending to this dimension of life isn't a luxury. It's essential to dying without regret. I wish I'd taken more risks. This regret often surfaces as people reflect on paths not taken, chances not seized, comfort zones never challenged. For many baby boomers, the irony is painful. We were the generation that proclaimed better to burn out than to fade away. Yet many of us chose security over adventure, certainty over possibility. I remember talking with William, a 74-year-old who spent his entire career at the same insurance company. I had opportunities, he told me. Job offers in exciting cities, chances to start my own business, even an invitation to join a friend's startup that eventually went public. But each time, I chose what felt safe. I don't regret the good life I built, but I do wonder about the life I might have had if I'd been braver. The fear that holds us back usually isn't fear of failure, it's fear of Regret. We worry we'll make the wrong choice. But what the dying teach us is that the actions not taken, the risks not embraced, often become our most painful regrets. And here's what's remarkable about our generation. We still have time for new adventures. We're healthier and living longer than any previous generation. Many of us will have decades of active life after traditional retirement age. That's not an epilogue. It's a whole new chapter waiting to be written. What would you do if you weren't afraid? What risk, large or small, might open up new possibilities in your life? Because the greatest risk of all might be reaching the end of your life and wondering, what if I wish I'd thought more about what I'm leaving behind? This final regret centers on legacy, not just financial inheritance, but the imprint we leave on the world, the values we pass down, the difference our lives have made. I spoke with Helen, an 83-year-old reflecting on her life while battling cancer. I realized I've spent decades accumulating things, she said, but very little time thinking about what actually matters, the stories, the wisdom, the values I want to pass on. My grandchildren don't need my china set. They need to know who I am and what I've learned in my time on this earth. For baby boomers, the legacy question has special resonance. We're the generation that wanted to change the world, that marched for civil rights and against war, that embraced ideals of personal freedom and social justice. But somewhere along the way, many of us got caught up in the pursuit of success as defined by society rather than our deeper values. Legacy isn't just about what we leave when we're gone. It's about how we live now. It's about aligning our daily choices with our deepest values. It's about asking, what kind of ancestor do I want to be? Creating meaningful legacy doesn't require grand gestures. It can be as simple as recording your life stories for future generations, mentoring a young person in your field, volunteering for causes you believe in, or having deep conversations with your children and grandchildren about what matters most. The question isn't, how will I be remembered? But how am I living today in ways that express what I truly value? As we reflect on these regrets of the dying, a common thread emerges. Almost all regrets are about connection to our authentic selves, to the people we love, to meaningful work, to our bodies, to the present moment, to something larger than ourselves. The good news, the truly liberating news, is that it's not too late to live differently. Whatever age you are right now, whatever your circumstances, you have the opportunity to make choices that your future self will thank you for. My conversation with my uncle in that hospital room happened 15 years ago. I wish I could tell you that I immediately transformed my life, that I never again got caught in the traps of workaholism or disconnection or playing it safe. That wouldn't be true. Change is rarely linear or perfect. But that conversation planted a seed. It made me start asking better questions about how I was living. It made me more conscious of the gap between what society defines as success and what actually creates a life of meaning and connection. If something in this conversation has resonated with you, if you've recognized yourself in any of these regrets, consider it an invitation, not to shame or regret, but to possibility. Every day is a new chance to live more authentically, to love more openly, to choose more consciously. Because here's what I've learned from studying the regrets of the dying. The secret to dying well is actually the secret to living well. And it's never too late. To start, if you found value in this conversation, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to this channel for more reflections on living with purpose and meaning. And most importantly, take one small step today. Make that call, have that conversation, sign up for that class, schedule that doctor's appointment, write that letter. Whatever action might move you toward a life with fewer regrets. Because the time we have is precious, and it's never too late to start living like we know it.